We'll switch to, we'll just jump ahead. We'll come back to the presentation on energize and fighting and looking at cancer-related fatigue. And I'll present first on the power of nutrition, so using food as a preventative medicine. And then we'll come back to the cancer energy one first. So today's discussion is actually going to revolve looking at some recommendations that come from a large cancer research institute in the United States called the American Institute for Cancer Research, otherwise known as the AICR. And it's been in operation for nearly 3 decades, and it's the largest facility that funds studies looking at diet, food, nutrition, physical activity, and cancer. And they fund studies not only in the US but abroad in different leading universities and hospitals and various institutions. In 2007, they published the second expert report entitled Food, Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Cancer Prevention, a Global Perspective. And it's the most comprehensive published document that actually exists looking at the links between food, nutrition, and cancer prevention. And so today's discussion will revolve around these different recommendations. So the AICR, their guidelines for cancer survivors is that we should be adopting this exact same guidelines as for cancer prevention. And we know that a good diet may protect the body from cancer recurrence or a secondary cancer. And science demonstrates that there is a really strong link between food and nutrition, physical activity, and the development of cancer. And this will be the message today, is that a healthy diet high in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, and plentiful in those, and low in red meats and processed meats is certainly the key take-home message for cancer prevention. So to start off, and you guys do have these summary notes to go home with, but the first recommendation is to be as lean as possible without becoming overweight. So our goal is to obtain, maximize and optimize the amount of muscle mass that we have in our body while reducing the amount of fat mass in our body. And that's essentially the take-home message for all chronic diseases, whether it's heart disease prevention, diabetes, or cancer prevention. But we don't want to become underweight either. That manifests a whole other bunch of health issues for us. And fat mass certainly does have an important part to play in our body, so we need to make sure we are a healthy body weight. But overall, we want to try to optimize our lean tissue, our muscle mass, and try to reduce or maintain a certain lower level of fat mass. And be physically active as possible. Leanne will talk about this when she comes and we go through the Energize presentation. But we want to be able to be active for at least 30 minutes every day. The next recommendation by the AICR is to avoid sugary drinks and energy-dense food. We know that those certainly contribute to weight gain and work against their first recommendation. Eat a variety of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes, such as peas, beans, and lentils. And in the next slide, we'll go over that a little bit. And so their recommendation is to eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. It's very similar to Canada's Food Guide. Canada's Food Guide is recommending through Health Canada for us to be eating 7 servings. This group is recommending 5. Eating whole grains, legumes with every meal. So we want to try to maximize our fiber content. And it says to limit refined sugars, so refined sugars and starches. So essentially limit the amount of white products, such as white rice, white flour, white pasta, and try to choose whole grain products, something where the bran and the germ, that fibrous component is still a part of the grain product. And research shows that about 20% of all cancers can be prevented by consuming adequate amounts of fruits and vegetables in the diet. So certainly a plant-based diet is really important. We want to limit the consumption of red meat, such as beef, pork, lamb, and avoid processed meats. And I'll come to this topic on the next slide as well. In terms of alcohol consumption, they're recommending for men to limit it to 2 drinks a day and women to 1 drink a day, and limit the consumption of salty foods and foods processed with less salt and sodium. And so that's a big take-home message that is really being pushed forth in Canada with the various salt reduction strategies that are in place. And we want to try and limit our salt intake to, at the very most, 2,500 milligrams a day. So essentially really choosing whole food products, less canned foods, less processed food, and obviously limiting the amount of added salt we're using in things. And don't use supplements to prevent cancer. There is no research that the use of dietary supplements is going to prevent cancer, or very little anyways. So the recommendations, what we want you guys to be doing is to be eating your nutrition instead of taking it in pill form. So in terms of the consumption of red meats and processed meats, the recommendation is to limit the amount of red meat to 18 ounces a week, and that's a raw weight, not a cooked weight. So it depends on your style of eating, but following a Western diet, 18 ounces really isn't a lot a week if we think of the amount we maybe cook for supper and eat leftovers the next day and throughout the whole week to get 18 ounces. About 3 ounces is about the size of the palm of your hand, and the thickness right in here by your pinky, or about the size of a deck of cards, is about 3 ounces. And so from this slide we can see that red meat and processed meat and the way we prepare it also increases their chance of certain types of tumors. And the main take-home message with the grilled and charbroiled preparation is that the temperature is the key thing. We need to be cooking at lower temperatures. When we cook at high temperatures, that's when we increase the amount of carcinogenic properties that are produced from those style of cooking methods. So cooking at lower heats is certainly the message from there. In terms of looking at poultry and fish, the AICR doesn't have a recommendation on the amount we should be consuming, but there also isn't like negative implications of eating that they've found through their recommendations, such as there is with red meat. This slide I'll just go over quite quickly, and the recommendation is it's best for mothers to be breastfeeding exclusively for 6 months. This also follows Health Canada's guidelines as well, and then start introducing liquids and solids. And the reason is for this is that this is the opportune time in our life that we accumulate the most immunity. The immunoglobulins pass through the breast milk, and that's where we're relating to. And then also do not smoke and chew tobacco. So Canada's Food Guide is the one take-home message, and I will go over that more in our other presentation. But in order to get adequate nutrition and follow these AICR guidelines, this is essentially what we do want to be following. And we should have a copy of Canada's Food Guide in the handout packages that you guys have. They're out there? Yeah. Okay. Out on the table out there, there's a copy of Canada's Food Guide for you guys. And about 4 years ago, Canada's Food Guide was updated. So if you haven't seen Canada's Food Guide for a little while, I will review it in the next presentation more so. But in order to get adequate fruits and vegetables, consuming the whole grains, limiting the amount of red meat consumption, essentially by following Canada's Food Guide, we will be able to implement the majority of these AICR strategies for nutrition and cancer prevention. This slide just discusses the importance of including all of the food groups in our diets, and many fad diets out there will end up eliminating a complete food group from our diets, and we can see when we do that, we end up really restricting the amount of nutrients that we get from that. So a really well-rounded variety in our diet is certainly a key component to be able to optimize the way that our bodies are operating. This is AICR's what they call foods that fight cancer. This is their list of foods that fight cancer that they have, and it consists of olive oil, canola oil, and flaxseed oil. So they're really encouraging a lot of the unsaturated fats, the heart healthier fats, These are the liquid oils, and these types of oils contain different amounts of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acid concentrations, and so that's why they're selecting these types of oils. The berries, the mangoes, cantaloupe, sweet potato, peppers, broccoli, that's basically a list of vegetables and fruits that are really high in antioxidant properties, and so that certainly is a word that's readily used in the cancer population, and for good reason. They certainly do have cancer-fighting properties, and again, we need to get them from our food instead of always taking and relying on supplements to get these. So food components, very important for the antioxidants. Beans and whole grains, again, comes back to the plant-based diet, looking at peas, beans, lentils, whole grains, and trying to incorporate these into every meal that we're choosing. And then the variety of fatty fish for the omega-3 concentrations is what we're looking at with these. And the recommendation is to be consuming 2 servings of fatty fish every week. And this would be kind of your take-home list that would consider of the fatty fish in our diet. So the bottom line, what is the take-home message? To achieve and maintain a healthy body weight, eat a variety of vegetables and fruits, choose a diet that's high in plant foods, select foods that are low in fat and salt, drink alcohol in moderation, decrease intake of red meat and avoid charred meats, and limit the amount of processed meats that we are consuming. And that's it for that presentation.